the fact that certain things bother you. And you might think, I wish nothing bothered me. It's like, no, you don't really, you know. Because if nothing bothered you, in some sense, that would be the same thing as not caring about anything. It actually turns out to be the case that the things that bug you are the things that you care about when they go wrong. And so then, this is a really useful question to ask yourself, you know, because you might be observing the political landscape and you think, that really bugs me. And maybe you annoy the hell out of your friends and your enemies and even yourself by, you know, being obsessively concerned about that thing that bugs you. And then you might ask yourself, well, why does that bug you? Because there's like a million things that could, in principle, bother you. And, you know, maybe you're one of those people that has a million things bother you, but probably not. There's more things that don't bother you than that do bother you, because there's a lot of things. And if everything bothered you, you'd just die. All right, so there's very selective things that bother you, and it's very interesting because in some sense they choose you. Because you might say something like, I wish that didn't bother me. It's like, that's a very strange thing to say, because it begs the question, why then does that bother you? And also, why can't you control it, right? That's a very, this is part of the reason I loved reading the psychoanalysts, because the psychoanalysts knew, they're the first people who really cottoned on to this in a kind of technically sophisticated manner. They knew that we were, in part, collections of autonomous sub-personalities, and that those sub-personalities could take control of us. And that's really what happens when something bugs you. It's something autonomous that has a will and an agency, takes control of you, and forces you to attend, despite yourself sometimes. And why should you attend? Because that's your destiny calling you, right? That's your problem. And that's a good thing to know, because people ask themselves, where do I find the meaning in my life? I would say, well, are there things that bother you? Yes, those are your problems. And you might say, well, I don't want those to be my problems. Like, hey, did someone ask you? It's just how it happens. And so then, why is that relevant to writing? Why don't you write about something that bothers you? And try to figure it out. Because you've got to ask yourself, well, first of all, what would your life be like if you actually addressed the things that bothered you? Right? And say, well, political things bother me. It's like, maybe you have a political duty that's calling to you. I mean, why not? Someone has to. And you're a citizen. Could be you. And not just an interest, right? And not just an obsession, but an obligation and a responsibility. And God only knows what would happen if you pursued that. I was talking to Mike Johnson, who's the fourth most powerful Republican in Washington. About 3 days ago, we were talking about the potential for young people to be involved in the political sphere. And in our culture, appallingly, most youth involvement comes in the form of protest. And that's the fault of the idiot universities, as far as I can tell, because basically what students are taught is that if something bothers them, which it might, then they should protest about it. It's like, well, you could do something about it instead of complaining about the people who are doing something.